What's going on, guys? It's Colin Tilley. Welcome to the Podcastle. This is the very first episode. I'm super excited to take you into my whole mindset behind the creation process. It's been some years that I've been doing this now, and I'm excited because today I'm going to take you into the first video that really was a big catalyst for my career. And the reason why I think this video is so important to talk about, because the resources were very minimal. And my approach was thinking big. And when you think big with small resources, you realize that can go such a long ways. Really excited to introduce Chris Brown, Deuces. I had never worked with Chris Brown previously. It's 2020 now, so this is exactly 10 years ago, a full decade ago. I was a completely different person with a completely different mindset, and I just wanted to get it. I wanted to create. I wanted to do things on a higher level. At the time, I had just started working with Tyga, and Tyga and I were doing videos just on the streets in LA. I was going out pretty much with a camera and some lights and just trying to figure out how to make it happen. I'd go into Final Cut Pro at the time. I would edit the videos down. My editing skills were pretty crazy at that point, and I was just making things look really, really, really cool. At least what I thought was cool in my own eyes. And I remember I was driving back from, I think it was the desert, from location scouting another piece, and I got a call from Tyga, and he was like, yo, I got Chris on the other line. I really want to have you do this video that we've got together. We want to shoot this video next week. Deuces was essentially Chris's big comeback. This was a huge catalyst for Tyga. This was a big thing for all of us, and so I feel like the energy was really there at the time. This was the first time I really saw my work on TV, and it was the craziest feeling, like seeing, this video go and like be on top 10 countdowns on like all the big stations, and seeing Colin Tilley Presents right there. I had friends that were like in jail hitting me up being like, yo, I just saw your name on TV. We all watch your shit. This shit's fucking crazy. So right there at that moment, the power of doing this, of creating this brand, was something that really, really, really helped. And as far as the cinematography, I mean, Rob Witt shot this. Rob is one of the first cinematographers that I've ever worked with, and so incredible at his craft. I learned so much from Rob Witt working throughout the years. We shot easily 100-something videos together. But this was one of our first that we did together, and we approached it where it was just about the photographs. So it was pretty much almost still photography on moving images. But at the time, I didn't even know what we were doing. I just knew I liked the way that it looked. And so it was basically framing your shots wide enough with incredible framing, very like urban photography, but using lots of negative space, and then letting this movement happen through the frame. We never took the camera off dolly. It was always locked, or it was always on a slight move, but we never did anything handheld. We never did anything that felt like it needed to like move and hit the beat. It was just about the perfect compositions, and I think that is something that really, again, made this piece feel so much more expensive than it really was. And also, so this shot right here, Chris Brown sitting on, he was really high up on this embankment, and we were shooting on a super long lens, so just really letting all the depth go out of focus. And I remember seeing Chris perform in this shot. You could really feel the pain and feel everything that he was going through. That's why these long lenses, it captures his face in such an incredible way. So these shots in the tunnel, I think these are probably my favorite moments of the entire piece, and definitely when I got in to edit the piece, these were my favorite parts of it, because this is when I really got to see the true star that Chris Brown really was. And I think Chris Brown is arguably one of the best performers in the entire world. And to have him in a setting like this where all of a sudden he just lit up, we basically frame this shot as a pure silhouette. There's no added lights to this entire piece. It's just the camera on a tripod on a wide enough lens to be able to see body movement. And again, we shot this on 120 frames per second, and Chris was like, yo, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna dance and I'm gonna do my thing. And I was like, cool. Like, I was like, just really feel it. The bigger you are with your body, the more we're gonna feel it. And this fool went in there, and I remember just being so shocked. I had never seen anything like this in my entire life. This was the first time that I'd seen somebody move like this to the beat of a song. Not only was he dancing and crumping and so emotional with it, but then when he started doing flips and all this other stuff, I was just blown away. And what I was able to do with that, as far as telling a story with the edit, was so important. Because I was able to use this, and if you look at it on a timeline, from the moment he walks into the shot and the way that he progresses his performance, going from kind of subdued and just more of this like very iconic, stoic, body positions, to then breaking it down, really getting into it and like doing these incredible crumping dance moves, to then all of a sudden flipping and going completely upside down and catching so much air. I was able to use that as a timeline in the edit and progress that, so that by the time that the end of the song hit, it was just at a full-on explosion of imagery exploding onto the screen. And because we shot it in 120 frames per second, it helped so much to be able to go from real time to slow motion and really be able to feel those speed ramps. This actually opened up a whole new can of worms, because I started to really use this as a platform for all my videos after that, as far as being able to capture dance, because it really gave me so much room in the edit. Okay, so this shot right here I love. And this is the first time that I really learned about the power of playing with foreground and background depth of field, and especially being able to rack focus between both of them and the power of that. So essentially what we did, this was underneath the 6th Street Bridge, which is now torn down, so it doesn't exist. And we basically placed Tyga up on this roadblock that was about 6 feet off the ground. Again, hit him with one HMI, and then placed Chris deeper in the scene and let him be completely silhouette. But we had learned earlier on in the day the power of Chris's silhouette and what that does for our storytelling, and that did so much for us. So essentially what we did then is we put a dolly that didn't go in and out, that didn't go sideways, but it was actually diagonal. So we could even create more of a depth of field from this. And we were able to, even though they weren't standing next to each other, they were able to have even more of a power and more of a language between each other. And then as we got onto longer and longer lenses, it almost felt like they were literally standing next to each other, even though they were 20 feet away. And I just love the composition of this shot. And again, I think I learned so much from the beauty of this. And this is just us out experimenting. This is us playing around. And we didn't really have the biggest game plan going into this video. It was listening to our guts, listening to the song, and doing what felt right, using minimalism. And I think it really translated really well. Okay, so this shit was sick. This is when we basically had I think one of Chris's friends or one of Tyga's friends brought out this dope old school Impala, and we were in the middle of an alleyway. Again, we had no lights, so we were just using the ambient, street lights that were out there. And we had Tyga, Chris, and Kevin walking down the street with this fucking Chevy bounce behind them. And we let them be silhouette. But what it did to them, it made them so much more aggressive. It made them so much more stoic, and they just stood tall in front of our camera. And we just pulled back very, very slow and let the shot ride out in a wide. And I just think it ended up doing something really powerful, especially for like the cadence and delivery of Tyga's verse. And these drops in the song were so much fun to edit to. I felt like it was a great time to incorporate speed ramps. I felt like it was a great time to incorporate more stoic imagery and just moments that felt like just moving photographs where we could just kind of feel that stillness and help us transition into the next scene. This shot right here that I have paused is, this is probably a 75 or 100 millimeter lens. We're shooting obviously spherical, and these were the Cooke S4s. And what you can see here is it's a very, very simple shot. And again, it's just one HMI just hitting him from the edge, and then we put some kind of beauty filters in that basically bloom the lens, and it creates this really beautiful glowy vignette that kind of comes out from the edges that he's lit up from. And I love framing artists on one side or the other, so I have this negative space to play with on the other side. And I used to do it because I like to be able to use that in the edit and be able to do cross dissolves or superimpose an image over another one. But now I just love the shot itself. I would want to frame this on my wall. I think it looks so cool. In this next chorus, you see everything progress. You see the movements get bigger. You see the edit ramping up, but it's still the same imagery, but it's just along that timeline of letting all of it progress. And you can learn a lot from that, even when giving direction to somebody, and when they're like, oh, well, how should I do this? You want to be able to tell a story. Even if there's not like a linear narrative story with an act 1, act 2, act 3, you still need to think about a performance in an act 1, act 2, act 3 structure, in the sense of being able to progress it and be able to have it end somewhere. And if you can tell a story just through your performance, then think about what you can do in an edit if you have several of those stories going on at once, and the way all that's going to cut together. And that's the beauty of coming from an editor's mindset, because I started out editing. So then when you're on set, you know what you're getting. You see it all coming together in your mind in the way that it's going to cut together, and naturally it flows. The whole experience as a whole was really a really crazy learning curve. It was definitely, there wasn't really much of a treatment written. This was a very experimental piece. And then from here, this piece and its success, I got to really take the ride with Chris on his, huge comeback and ride that wave with him. And from here on, we went and did about 30 other pieces. So I went from this one right here, which was, a couple $1,000s to produce this piece. And then I've got to go and, experience a whole other, form of filmmaking on every other Chris Brown set from here, whether it was his own singles or stuff that he was featured on. I think that really shows you the power of a relationship and of trust. And the fact that we trusted each other so much, and Chris trusted me and my team to be able to execute this piece. By the way, we did no bullshit the night before. So we literally went from shooting the video no bullshit the night before in the building that I lived in, 1010 Wilshire, in the apartment and on the rooftop, to then going the next day out and shooting this video. It's pretty crazy to see what you can do when you have a talented individual in front of the camera and a talented group of people behind the camera to be able to put something like this together. And keep in mind, we had like a 10-person crew to do both of these shoots. But what that did was just exponential for all of us really going into, the future. What I learned as a director, from this video in particular, was working with, I'd never worked with anybody that was this talented, that as far as moving their body and performance arts and dancing and camera presence. I really saw what greatness was, and I was able to adapt my skills from behind the lens and be able to help all of that enhance itself. I was able to go into an edit, and I was able to approach an edit from a whole different perspective, having this new footage and having something that meant so much to me. The experience itself was so powerful. I think I edited this video in 2 nights. Next day colored it. we put a little bit of a big part of our color process on this. This was I was working with Bob at the time, the colorist. He came to our studio, and we did an incredible color pass where we set heavy power windows. So with black and white, you can really do this because you can basically take one still image and you can go in and you can set all these different power windows or vignettes or whatever you want to call it, and you can basically really pop out the sky. You can make things much darker, much moodier. You can pop out skin. And then what we did is we incorporated some blue into the midtones, and that blue was the thing that basically added this bit of color, that added this bit of coolness, that really helped give us the tonality and give us the like emotional feel that we needed for this piece, because it's called Deuces. It's about saying goodbye, and it can mean so much to so many different people. And so it can be about relationships, it can be about your past. For me, this piece was really about the learning process, and I didn't realize how much I was learning at the moment, because when you're that young, I mean, I was 19 years old doing this piece. When you're that young and you're that hungry to create and to make something incredible, you're not thinking about everything else that's going on. You're not thinking about the business of it. You're not thinking about the trajectory of that piece. You're thinking about, you have tunnel vision, and you're in there trying to create the best thing that you can create with these incredibly talented people. And so because of that tunnel vision, it was the first piece that really got me recognized. And I really remember too, before this, for about a year straight, I was hitting up my old rep, this guy named Tommy Labuda, incredible guy. And I remember for about a year straight, I was hitting up Tommy, and I was like, hey man, like, do you want to represent me? I was sending him all my work. You know, it was all my Bay Area videos. I was doing, so many videos in the Bay Area for a couple $100 a pop. And I thought I was making some pretty cool stuff. So I kept on sending them to him because I was like, I want to work in the big leagues, man. Come on, blah, 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 blah. And he was I remember he hit me back one time and was like, hey man, you're not there yet, but like, just keep me informed on the stuff that you're working on. And then right after Deuces, Tommy actually hit me back and was like, okay, I think it's time for us to meet. And at that moment, I knew that that something was right, because the right people were noticing this piece. It was causing the right kind of controversy. It was getting the right kind of attention. And I knew that was the path that I had to take. And also, I think what this piece really did for me was it helped me define my style as a director. And which is a very huge thing, because look, I pride myself on being a chameleon of a director. I like to be able to take any genre. I like to take any style of video. I like to take any style of film or commercial, and I like to be able to, put my spin on that, no matter what it is. I like to be able to play with all different formats. I like to play with all different styles. But as far as my style as a director, this really helped me figure out what that was. And I mean that by what did I like seeing through a lens? What did I like seeing through an edit? And when you can help really define that, that is something that made me so much more laser focused as a director, knowing what I wanted for the future and what I wanted for the future of my work and what I wanted the future of my work to feel like. Because that's really what this is all about. Can you make people feel something? And if you aren't making people feel something as a director, you aren't doing your job. And the fact that we were able to make people feel something from this meant everything, because it was about nailing the tonality. It was about nailing an aesthetic. And all of that put together is what helps create something special. And I think it was a very impactful piece of art in general that I think will live on for a long time.